let's back out of this document. I want to talk about tables as kind of a final thing here. Tables are, really an important part of PDF accessibility, but they are quite a burden from a tagging perspective for most people that are using, the primitive tools like Adobe Acrobat. So if I click here on the thumbnail for page 6, it's going to take me to this page. And well, if I take a look at this page, it's pretty scary looking. Got a bunch of these little tiny zones for like each data cell. And if I were to go to the HTML preview just to kind of see like where I'm at, you can easily put yourself in the shoes of a blind person who would have this table read to them like this. It's just a bunch of nonsense, completely useless to just leave this whole page in this type of format. So what I do as a remediator is I'm going to draw a zone around the entire table. So when I put a zone over all of this, I can ignore the existing zones underneath. I'm not worried about those. I can then hit T on my keyboard, or you can, again, use the drop-down menu if you'd like for table. You can then either click on the table editor button, or you can just double click on the zone that you created. Either one will work. It'll take you to the table editor. And when you're in the table editor, you will notice these green grid lines. The green grid lines, they're kind of out of place right now. You can manipulate them and drag them around, but that's not very fun. And, it would be pretty tedious because there's a lot of data cells in this table. So what we have are these table detector sliders. So for columns and rows, if you just nudge these sliders from left to right, it wakes up the artificial intelligence. So it's going to just kind of reestablish where those grid lines go. And now all of my green grid lines are in perfect alignment with my table cells. So as you don't have to do this, but you can see all of the cells are nicely defined. And with just that quick change of, nudging the sliders around, if I go back to my preview, you can see what a dramatic difference we've made from whatever this big monstrosity is of data. So we've actually built a real table now. So we've got some, basic table structure established. There's a couple of other things though that we have to address with this table. Primarily, the fact that like level 1 at the top, it's kind of like split into 2 cells and then it's flanked by empty cells on either side. We need to make sure that we're spanning across all of these different columns because level 1 kind of straddles these 6 different columns. So what I do to span is I click in the cell where I want the span to begin, and then I will hold Shift on my keyboard. So the Shift key on your keyboard, and then select where you want the span to end. That will then select all of these cells for me, so they all kind of like turn purple. And then this arrow button appears. So this is the span button, or you can also just press S on your keyboard. Either one will work. And if you then go back to your preview, you will see that level 1 now spans across all 6 of those columns. One other thing that we have to address with this table is the fact that the second row here, these are also table headers. So right now, by default, Equidox assumes that your table has a single column header and a single row header. So that's just the average kind of run-of-the-mill table where you have table data, a header for each of your columns and rows. But in this case here, we have 2 levels of column headers. So not only is it the specific level, like level 1, level 2, level 3, but then you have a subheading level as well. So all we do is over here on the left-hand side where it says column and row header, they're at the default 1-to-1 ratio. If you just hit the up arrow, changing it from 1 to 2, you will then go back to your preview and you'll see that you have bold font for that top 2 row section, indicating that both of these are going to be tagged as headers. So if you're in this particular cell as a screen reader user, you know that you are specifically in the mobile device row. You know that it's level 1, and then more specifically, it's the SSN column. So they're able to freely navigate this table data and always understand their relationships with their various column and row headers. Table summaries are not required, but you have this checkbox here that says auto summarize. You can hit that checkbox and Equidox will give you a table summary programmatically. It's not really a compliance requirement. And for simple tables, table summaries are pretty much just obsolete for modern screen readers, but something you can provide with a checkbox there. Just hit it and it will fill it in for you. You can always add or enhance this table summary. Like if you're using, I saw a table the other day that was using stars, like these totally like non-standard symbols, stars that were like indicating how highly rated these like mutual funds were for an investment portfolio. So it's like 5 stars, 4 stars, 3.5 stars. That's great if you can see the stars, but a screen reader user doesn't know what those are. So you can go in and like indicate that, okay, in the 4th column, there's a bunch of stars. And depending on how many of those little symbols there are, each one of those symbols equates to a specific number of stars. So you can make like that sort of, enhancement through the table summary. You can also go into a specific cell. And much like you have that actual text or the custom feature, you can enhance it by like typing in something that doesn't exist. So like here's a custom cell edit. Not that you're going to need to do this very often, but if something is like, using like a visual cue, you can add in something that's not there, like putting in real words that can then be read by a screen reader. You can add and split rows, like deleting a row with these buttons. You can hit R and D. You can create new columns and hit remove columns. So that's C and M for your keyboard shortcuts. And you also have the ability to nudge your columns or nudge your rows. You won't need to do this very often at all, but just in case you do, instead of clicking on 50 rows and moving them up just like 2 pixels, you can nudge them and they all move together in unison. Again, that's very rare. If you have like a super tightly spaced table, maybe you have to do it from time to time, like size 6 font with 90 rows in the table. Like those types of things can be like super, super tight. So like you can nudge things so that you don't have to click on all of them individually. But if I save the table and close out, when I return to the PDF, all of those like million little zones that I had before, they have been overridden as one single table zone.